Okay, so I know that it's been a couple weeks since I did a post, so I'm doing it now. We are 33 weeks and a day today, and last week, at 32 weeks, we had a doctor's appointment and our very first NST. So we go in for the doctor's appointment, and of course the midwife asks, have you been feeling any contractions? And I say no, and I've had a little bit of tightening and pressure, but no pain associated with it or anything. Of course, in the middle of the appointment, I start getting pain in my back, and I just didn't think nothing of it. I figured it was just from sitting wrong, the way that I was sitting in the chair that they put you in. So we finished up our appointment. They did find that I had a little bit, my blood pressure was elevated, which we figured would happen at the end of this pregnancy. We're not nearly close enough to the end like we were with Sebastian's for the blood pressure, but they said it's normal with twins. So they went ahead and sent me over to do my NST, which is a non-stress test, which we did at the hospital, seeing as they have better equipment over there to do those type of tests. So we go in, and the nurse puts the monitors on, and she goes, are you feeling those contractions? And I go, if that's what that is, then yes, I am. And they were coming every I think about 5 to 6 minutes apart is how, they weren't very strong. They started to get stronger and stronger, but they were only 5 to 6 minutes apart, which was a little weird. She just chalked it up probably to being dehydrated and hungry. The nurse didn't tell my doctor that we were having contractions. We finished up the strip, which is basically, if you never had an NST done, an NST strip is just basically a time measurement of the baby's heartbeats, and basically they want to make sure there's enough accelerations and deaccelerations of both of the babies just to make sure that their heartbeats are working the way that they should be. So we go home, and I'm still feeling the contractions. They feel like they're getting worse, getting stronger and stronger, and they're horrible. Um, they're not nearly as strong as probably what when you get into true labor feels like, but they hurt. They're like about an 8. So we come home, and I lay down in bed, and I'm trying to deal with them as best I can, and they're not going away. I can't get any sleep. I was going to take a nap when I got home, and I just couldn't do it. So I had Ron call the midwife. She said to drink about 64 ounces of water and take a shower within a half an hour, and that should help decrease the contractions. It didn't. So after I got out of the shower, I'm sitting here, and I'm kind of thinking maybe if I relax and try not to stress, no big deal. It was a big deal. I told my husband, I said, we need to go to the hospital. I said, these contractions are not leaving. So we went ahead and went to the hospital, and they put me on the monitors, and of course the nurse that was there was the original nurse that did my NST, who was extremely rude. So I'm hoping that when we go back for our C-section, we won't have her. And she put us in a room, and she ended up giving us another nurse. She's the one that actually hooked us up. She was just iffy. She's okay of a nurse. Um, so she hooked us all up to the monitors. We were monitoring the contractions. She checked my cervix. I hadn't dilated. Probably about an hour later, they checked my cervix again. Still no dilation, but the contractions were still coming. They were still pretty strong. No pain relief there at all. And then the shift change came around. So we've been there for a couple hours already. And the shift change came around, and this really nice nurse, her name's Margaret, she's completely sweetheart, came in, and she said, we're going to go ahead and check you. If you still haven't dilated, we're going to send you home. And I went, okay, great. Because I'm thinking at this point, we're probably being like we were at 27 weeks with Sebastian, where I had to go in because I was having contractions, and it was just from being dehydrated. So I was thinking, oh great, she's going to check me, I'm going to be 0, and we're going to go home. No biggie, I can drink plenty of water. I'll have to pee all night, but that's okay. So she comes in, she checks me, and I'm dilated to 1, and I am 80% effaced. That scared the shit out of me. Excuse my language, but I was scared. So they put an IV in me. They were gonna give me magnesium sulfate, which will help with not only supposed to help with the contractions, but is also supposed to help the baby's brain development. So they put me on that and put me in a different room, and of course the one nurse that they had come in to give me the IV blew out a vein in my hand, which actually doesn't hurt. Your hand is sore the next day for a couple days, and you have this huge bruise from your vein basically bleeding out inside, because that's what a bruise is a bleed on the inside of right underneath the skin. So they put me in a room, and a different room, because they actually had me in the delivery room because they were completely booked or completely full. So they actually had a room available finally, and they put me in a room. They put the IV in. We started magnesium. She checked me again. I was 1.5 and 90% effaced. So at this point, I'm getting really freaked out. The contractions pretty much are about 3 to 4 minutes apart at this point. I'm thinking, oh my Lord, we may have these babies. At 32 weeks, not a good idea, especially with twins. So we ended up, they continued the magnesium sulfate, and she checked me about an hour after the second time and found that I was 3 centimeters and 100% effaced, and I actually had my bag of waters bulging out of my cervix. So at this point, they're giving me another medication on top of the magnesium. Magnesium sulfate, by the way, is not a very nice drug to people. It actually makes you feel extremely hot and a little woozy, I guess you could say. I felt more of the heat aspect, in the rooms at our hospital they're not every single room has the temperature gauge on it, so you can't change the temperature in that room. So of course I had to have them bring me in a fan. So basically it was just keep me on the magnesium, watch me overnight, start me on oral medications. They also started me on a steroid shot, 1 of 2 that particular day, so that way the baby's lungs would develop quicker if I did need to have them. They checked me a couple more times throughout the night. I stayed at 3 centimeters, 100% effaced. Contractions continued. They kept monitoring the babies. The babies were looking fine. They were moving and grooving and whatnot. I didn't get much sleep. The next morning, the doctor came in and said, I think that we should just go ahead and transfer you up to Mercy, which is a hospital about 45 minutes away. Since Mercy has a NICU, and our hospital here, St. E's, doesn't. So they sent me up to Mercy. I stayed there for a week. They took me off the magnesium because once I got transferred up there, they had to transfer me by ambulance, number one, which was different for me. But once I got transferred up there, the magnesium started. It was a mixture of the medications. So they had me on a blood pressure medication that's also not only supposed to help with blood pressure, but also supposed to help in relaxing the uterine muscle. But because it was doing the same thing that the magnesium was supposed to do, it's like an overkill of medicine. So of course my chest started tightening up. I felt like I was having almost an asthma attack, and I don't have asthma. So they stopped the magnesium right away. I started to feel better probably within 45 minutes or so. And they kept me on a saline drip, which is just liquid, basically just kind of like water that they're putting into you, just to keep you hydrated. And they kept me on the oral medication. I don't know what it's called. It starts with an N, I believe. And they kept me up at that hospital for almost a week, just checking the babies. We ended up they took me off the monitors 24/7, and we just did 2 NSTs a day at the hospital, and then they would monitor the contractions. Some days were better than others. Some days I was having them every 6 to 7 minutes, and they would be really, really strong, and sometimes they would completely stop. So finally, by Sunday, my husband came up, and he talked to the doctor while I was taking a nap, and told him, I don't like her being on this medication. It's not working. Her blood pressure is not staying down the way that you guys want it to. It keeps fluctuating, and the contractions haven't stopped. So there's no point in her taking this medication if it's not working. And I have to agree with him, and so did the doctor. So they stopped me on that medication. So Sunday evening, I said, I want to go home. If I'm not here, because they ended up taking me off the saline drip probably about 3 days in, and kept me on a low-calorie diet because of my gestational diabetes. And so I was just tired of being there. Those beds are so uncomfortable. They hurt your thighs because you can't lay on your back when you're pregnant. You can't lay on your stomach when you're pregnant. You can only lay on either your left or your right side. well, your left and your right side can only be laying on for so long at a time before you have to flip and flop. Well, when you're pregnant with twins, your belly kind of gets in the way and hurts when you have to move. So I was ready to come home. I told the doctors, they said, we want to keep you overnight, just one more night, just to double check and make sure that you don't have any more contractions. I didn't, so I got to come home Monday. So I was there for a little less, I was in the hospital a little less than a week because we went in on Tuesday at St. E's, went up to Mercy on Wednesday. So I was in the hospital, for 6 days. And it was very scary. There was times that we thought that we wouldn't make it through the weekend, this past weekend, and so that scared us. We were really afraid that the babies would have to stay in the NICU. We did get a second shot of steroids, so the steroids and the magnesium sulfate should have helped already, actually. The babies mature the lungs and the brain a little bit more, which is good. I'm still dilated to 3. I'm still having contractions off and on, although once I got home, the contractions really slowed down, like a lot. So I was really happy about that. And now I'm basically just on bed rest at home again, and I will do a belly shot eventually. Just really not in the mood to do it right now because I've been home 2 days, and we had a doctor's appointment today. He listened to the heartbeats. They sound fine. We do another NST next week, and we're just going to be praying that we make it to 36 weeks. I know that I look disheveled, but that's the way it goes when you've been in the hospital and now you're home. You don't feel like doing crap. So that's where I've been for the last week, and that's my post for 33 weeks pregnant with twins. If you have any questions, let me know.